Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new podcast on Realtor Talk. Today, I've got a special guest on. Her name is Sophia Kazmi. Thanks for coming on, Sophia.
Thank you for having me.
So, Sophia works for Enness and works on local and both global mortgages as well. Sophia, why don't you introduce yourself and just explain who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lloyd. So as Lloyd mentioned, I work for Enness. We're a high net worth mortgage brokerage. Now, we first opened our offices in London back in 2007. And since then, we've opened offices globally. So London, obviously, Dubai, Monaco, Ibiza, and Jersey. Now, we focus on sourcing finance for high net worth individuals, predominantly looking at securing real estate all across the world in prime locations such as London, the south of France, Paris, Spain, the Balearics, the Caribbean, and so on. It's not just real estate that we can secure finance against, though we can also secure it against luxury assets such as yachts, art, watches, so all sorts really.
Okay, so that's interesting and very helpful for people who are not just looking actually for real estate here, but also other assets across the globe. Specifically, yeah. Obviously, we're on a real estate show, so we'll focus on that. As a specialist broker and a specialist company, who are the main kind of clientele that you deal with and help, and what are the particular needs that you specialize in?
Yeah. So, I mean, typically as a high net worth brokerage, that's how we market ourselves. Our clients tend to be, as a result, high net worth individuals looking at borrowing in excess of 1 million. But that doesn't mean to say that we have clients who aren't borrowing less than that. I mean, I have clients who are borrowing for as little as £100,000, and then we don't really have a maximum loan amount. I mean, we've arranged financing in excess of 25 million euros in the past, so it's certainly possible. And it's a range, really. I mean, the types of clients, obviously in Dubai, there's a huge expat community, British expat community in particular. So with that, there are a lot of British clients who are looking at either their first-time buyers, looking at buying a buy-to-let property, or perhaps they're looking at buying a property which they intend on moving back to within the next couple of years. But then on top of that, obviously, in Dubai, it's extremely international. So you have clients looking at buying all sorts, really, and high net worth clients looking at buying beautiful properties in Ibiza, in the Caribbean, in the south of France. So it's all across, really.
Okay, and when you said 1 million, are you talking about £1 million, or are you talking?
Yeah, £1 million, or 1 million euros. Really, it's quite close at the moment.
Okay, and it goes up from that, of course, depending on the property that you're looking for. Okay, and then why should someone use yourself or a company like Enness to do this and find finance rather than trying to do it themselves?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually, and we get it quite a lot. I mean, firstly, someone can do it by themselves. Sure, you can certainly approach the high street, especially if you're in the UK. You can approach the high street, and you can probably secure a mortgage. But the benefit of using us in particular is that Enness are not we're a whole of market brokerage. So by that, what I mean is we are not tied to one panel. We have access to over 300 lenders. So where, let's say, you might go and approach the local banks, we will have access to, let's say, 5 products which they will be able to offer you. Us as a brokerage, we can access all sorts of banks, whether it be private banks, retail banks, niche lenders, private equity firms. Really just depends down to the client and their profile. We have a relationship with these banks as well, or these lenders, they tend to give us preferential rates too. The other tricky thing is, especially being overseas, is that the mortgage process is sometimes not the easiest process, especially if you go and do it by yourself. And a lot of the time what I have had is I've had clients who have gone and done it by themselves, and then perhaps they've realised that it's quite tricky, or they may not necessarily have certain documents, especially here, for example, we don't always have payslips. And some banks, you need to approach the right bank, because some banks will just turn a blind eye, not turn a blind eye, they will just decline the application if you don't have it. So you need to approach the right bank who is comfortable with clients who perhaps have slightly more complex income structures, or just not something that they're used to. So we will prepare the application for the underwriters and for the credit committee so that it is in the most attractive manner, if you were, to obviously so that the application is accepted. As I mentioned, we have access to a range of lenders, so depending on the client's profile, once I've had my first conversation with the client, I know already off the top of my head who is going to do it, who's going to be the best for such clients. So that's why.
Yeah, I think that's an important point in that you know already you have the expertise, you're working in the market every single day. So someone who comes and you, once you've asked them a few questions, you can point them in the correct direction. Whereas you might, if you're trying to do it yourself, be wandering around like a headless chicken and missing out on the potential best deals for you.
Absolutely. And I think also just on that as well, I think what's important to note is for Enness, we are fully regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority as well. A lot of brokerages which you may approach are not, but with that, the FCA, obviously, you have to be, we're fully regulated. We have a full complaints process. So we're protected by that as well, and as a result, reliable brokerage. The other thing to also bear in mind is that a lot of clients, especially high net worth clients, may want to look at it's not just the mortgages, but they want perhaps to look at what's the best way of holding their property in terms of structuring, whether it be in their personal names or sort of in a company. And although we can't give that advice, we can certainly put them in touch with a trusted partner who will be able to do so. So we will hold their hand essentially from start to finish. And really, we are the point of contact for the bank or for the client. So it really just takes a lot of stress off the client.
Definitely more of a kind of one-stop shop for helping them in their buying process. And that's why what we also do as a company as well, try to recommend different company structures, conveyancing, all of that stuff. And Sophia here is also someone who can help with that. If you're looking to buy an international property, then the financing side and the other part of it is also there to conduct everything in one way with one easy point of contact. In terms of Dubai, I wanted to ask you about that briefly first before I talk more about international mortgages. But how can you assist here for properties in Dubai for people living here, or maybe even from abroad and looking to invest into Dubai?
Yeah, I mean, I think it works quite similarly, whether it be Dubai or whether it be internationally. I think what really matters is the client's profile and how much they're borrowing. Now, if we talk about Dubai in particular, we wouldn't necessarily be approaching, normally if someone's doing it by themselves, they would approach a local bank here, but again, it may not be the case. We work with both private and retail banks. We would, being we're in Dubai though, we'll be able to certify all the documents for the clients, so that can sometimes save time and money in doing so. But other than that, it just comes down to the profile of the client really and who we would approach. But the process remains the same. Collecting of the documents will remain the same. Valuations will still need to take place, just like wherever you're buying. So that will remain the same.
Okay, I think we'll discuss more about the process and all of those things later. But yeah, that's helpful to know, Sophia. If I move on to the international mortgages, where are you finding the most kind of popular locations abroad that residents of Dubai are looking to get finance in, and where's it most easily available for them to get the finance invest in foreign countries?
So I think, like I mentioned before, I think being Dubai has a huge British expat community. There are a lot of people looking to buy in the UK as a result. In addition, whether that be a buy-to-let or a residential property. That being said, there are obviously, it's multicultural, so there are people looking at buying the Balearic luxury properties, France, Paris in particular, the south of France. A lot of people also look at developing chalets in the Alps, such as Portugal, Mazin, in the Caribbean as well. There are some really lovely properties. So it really does range. There really is a huge range. And again, the type of financing too. It's not just buy-to-let or residential, they're all commercial. We can arrange short-term bridging finance. I guess it's just really what we run with the clients looking for, and also their time frames and then who we approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just UK as well that we can lend it. Well, we can secure financing in. It's also the Crown dependencies, Jersey, Guernsey, and the Isle of Man. So it's all over really.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you find most people, I know you're talking about chalets in the Alps, are a lot of people doing that more as a kind of a holiday home, or are a lot of the financing you provide for investment properties that you were talking about, buy-to-let? What's the kind of ratio you see for that?
It's really a range, I think, because building a holiday home or building a chalet, in the Alps is not cheap. Mm-hmm. So it's hardly a first purchase for many people. So they tend to rent it out because the yields are quite high, as you can imagine it in the Alps, especially peak season.
Yeah.
But it is also a home that they would use, and it's something that they would hold on to and then pass on to their kids as well. And then come summer or winter, they're great places to go. And skiing in the winter, but then also they have some beautiful hiking trails in the summer. So
yeah, that sounds idyllic, doesn't it? To have your
own. It does, I know. Property. Especially at times like this, we could really do with some snow, and it's almost 50 degrees here.
That's wishful thinking, unless you go to the Mall of Emirates.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know you're talking about a lot of British clients and looking to buy back home or abroad. Are you getting a lot of Arab, like Emirati clients as well who look to use finance, or they tend to be more cash buyers?
You do have a lot of people who are cash buyers, certainly, or at least want to or consider being cash buyers at first. But I think when they, especially when you're looking at sort of the higher purchase prices as well, the banks that you can approach will offer extremely competitive interest rates, and with that, you can get mortgages 80% loan to value, and some clients even at 100% loan to value overseas, internationally. So I think when they see those rates of sub 2% in Europe, it's extremely competitive, and rather than, let's say, purchasing one property in cash, they can sort of diversify, if you were, and perhaps buy property in the UK and internationally or in Europe at very competitive rates.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's it's interesting when you compare it globally rather than just looking at a local market. When you look on a global scale, the diversity in terms of rates and all of this stuff is interesting, and interesting to compare between. I wanted to ask you, so for people who wouldn't know how to start in terms of applying for the mortgage, all the documents and everything that needs to be done, can you just give us a kind of walkthrough through the basic process when you're talking about the timelines, how it works for different nationalities, all of that kind of stuff?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So usually how it works is we would be introduced to the client, whether that be through an introducer or they call in. We would conduct a fact find initially. Now that would just be a conversation with the client initially to understand their profile, what they're looking for, sort of how they're paid and so on. Once we've done that, we would then put together a write-up and approach the lenders who, as I mentioned before, we would already have a good idea of who's going to do it. I mean, we have these relationships with these banks or niche lenders, so we know already what their criteria is, where their appetite lies, and as a result, we know who to approach. They will then come back to us with their feedback and hopefully their indicative terms. And once they've done that, we'll then present them to the client. And only then, if they're happy to move forward and submit an application, does our formal process begin, if you were. And that would be collecting all the documentation, such as passports, proof of address, of course, proof of income. Now, in terms of proof of income, I know that can be quite tricky, as we mentioned, but the banks that we would be approaching would normally be comfortable with the salary certificate or a letter from the employers if they don't have pay slips. Bank statements as well, we would require those. And just the proof of deposit, really, and the rest would just be on a case-by-case basis, depending on the banks.
Okay. So the eligibility, it would depends really on the different types of bank and determining on their particular risk profile at the time and client's eligibility according to that. What about in terms of costs as well?
So it varies. I mean, typically banks will normally charge a fee of anywhere between 0.5 or 0.25% to 1%. Now that can be also more than 1%. It depends on the lenders. I mean, if you're looking at arranging bridging finance, for example, you can look at fees sort of in the region of 2.5%. So it does vary. And those can, again, depending on the bank, be either added onto the loan amount or due at completion.
Okay.
So it really does vary. The other thing, obviously, to bear in mind is stamp duty. That's another thing to consider. A lot of people may forget about it, and legal fees as well. Buying in Europe, in particular, sometimes legal fees can stack up. I mean, you have notary fees and taxes and so on. They really can add up. So it's good to always get those fees at the beginning, so you know there's no nasty surprises.
Yeah, of course, you want to know up front. And what about in terms of timelines? From kind of the start of the process, from the initial run through that you go through them to understand their circumstance, to actually getting the approval of the mortgage. Is there a standard average time frame that you look at, and does it really vary depending on the different country that you're looking in? Can you just enlighten us on that?
Yeah, I think, again, it makes a huge difference depending on what type of financing you're looking for firstly. So if you're looking at bridging finance, we can look at securing bridging finance within a week. It can take a week to 2 weeks. That's the idea of bridging finance. It's meant to be short-term public finance. Typically, though, I would suggest that it would take about 6 to 8 weeks on average for an international client to secure financing. Sometimes, obviously, that can take longer. Mm-hmm. There was a bit of delay, obviously, with COVID. Valuations were put on hold, so a lot of offers were sort of on hold until the satisfactory valuations were returned back to the banks. But it seems that surveyors are now back out and valuing in the UK, so things have now picked up. So I would usually say sort of between 6 to 8 weeks from the moment you submit an application to completion. Once you've submitted an application to the bank, it then goes to the underwriters for approval. They will then instruct the valuation, and then once they have received valuation, they will then issue the formal binding mortgage offer. And depending on the banks, that's valid for between 3 to 6 months. Typically.
Okay, that's interesting. Also, you're talking about the documents, stuff like the pay slips, your personal IDs, these kind of things that you need to submit for the application. Obviously, if you're dealing with different countries and different languages, even in, say, if you're buying in China or in Russia, do you need to have those documents translated into the local language generally? How is this done?
I know I keep saying this, but it does depend on who you approach. So with some of the retail banks and sort of high street banks, yes, the likelihood is that you would need them to be translated. Now, we can advise on certain companies to do so, just to lower the costs. If we've advised them, we've suggested them in the past, we know that they're going to charge an average. But a lot of the banks we may approach, private banks, or it's quite niche banks in particular, may have sort of foreign desks. So, for example, I have a Russian client who has all his documents are in Russian, so payslips, bank statements and so on are in Russian, but that file will be passed over to the Russian desk at said bank. So there'll be no need to translate the documents, which will obviously save them a lot of time and money. And also just to bear in mind, a good thing is that with us, all of our international brokers at Enness are bilingual. I myself speak Greek and French, so we can also help on that side as well. But yeah, otherwise, you're right, it can be quite a tedious procedure.
Yeah, I can imagine. And obviously dealing with foreign banks, different requirements. Like you said, it always depends on the particular circumstances, but at least you have a solution to make it easier for anyone applying to organize the translation. In terms of lenders, you've been talking about the retail banks and also working with private banks. Obviously, I know the difference, but maybe some people don't know too much about it. Can you just explain the difference between the two, and also if there's any difference in the requirements from both of them?
Yeah, sure. So with retail banks, they're sort of, or high street banks, they're sort of the banks that you would approach who are looking, and you're looking for just a conventional mortgage with no real long-term relationship. These banks are just transaction only, if we were, and they'll typically go up to 75, 80% loan to value. In terms of documents, they'll want the standard proof of address, passport. They're a bit more particular with ticking all the boxes in terms of having the documents on file. With a private bank or with sort of alternative lenders and platforms, private equity or hedge funds and so on, they don't really have one process or one product even. It's just on a case-by-case basis. A lot of these private banks or global private banks or even discrete ones, they tend to look for more of a relationship. So they position themselves more as wealth managers, if you were, rather than just lenders or credit issuers. So as a result, what they would sometimes require is that assets under management are placed on the account with the bank in order to commence a private banking relationship. That's where they vary. And then with that, as a result, they're able to offer much more competitive rates. So where with a retail bank, you may be looking at rates in the region of 2% or north of 2%, you might be able to get something considerably lower with a private bank. Of course, you have to face that collateral with the bank.
Okay, that's interesting, and thanks for clearing that up as well on the differences. I know, at the moment we're not able to travel internationally so well and meet up because of all the social distancing that's going on, not just here in Dubai but across the world. In terms of documentation and the full process, can everything be done electronically now, or are there still some instances where you actually still have to physically go to the destination country where you're looking to buy the property?
Yeah. I think some banks can certainly, a lot of banks now can actually do things electronically. We're based here as well in Dubai, and we have representatives all over really. So if it's just a case of certifying documents, then we can do so, and we can post them to the banks, which is what sometimes the banks will need as a minimum. If, let's say, we're using a private bank, a lot of them will have, or even a retail bank perhaps, they will have a presence where the client is based. So in terms of conducting all the KYC and the due diligence, that can be done where the client is based. However, the booking office, and by that I mean where the assets and collateral are held, will be in Luxembourg or Switzerland perhaps. But at least the bank can meet with the client in person and take that off. But otherwise, everything like what we're doing now, it can be done online or via Zoom. A lot of the time, clients just hold up their passport, the camera, and the banks can take a screenshot, and they can certify documents that way as well. So there has been a lot of changes. It's quite interesting to see how changes have come around over the last 12 weeks or 8 to 12 weeks. But yeah, banks are being a lot more flexible and new ways around it with unprecedented circumstances, of course.
Yeah, I think because banks aren't necessarily known for modern processes, shall we say, they're not renowned.
No.
So, but it's given them a bit of a kick to start modernizing the processes, and only a good thing, I think, to make business and money flows much more smooth. Wanted to ask also about local bank accounts. So when you're looking to get mortgages in certain countries, do local bank accounts need to be set up in those countries generally? And again, what are the requirements needed if that's the case?
Yeah. So yes, normally they will need a UK or a local bank account wherever they are buying or remortgaging, or if they're remortgaging, I assume they already have a bank account there. But yes, they would normally need a bank account locally. Now, if the bank doesn't offer that service, then we have the contacts in order to either help them do it, or we can refer them over to someone who can do so at a minimum cost, and also very simple process. But otherwise, a lot of the banks that they're arranging the mortgage through as well can actually open a bank account for them at the same time.
Yeah, I think they'd be happy to do that for them anyway. The banks always love to offer you a bank account, don't they? To put your money.
Sometimes it's quite a tricky one. It's because you need to have some banks will want you to have sort of a UK footprint or a UK passport, or even have a UK property or some form of footprint in the UK before opening the bank account. So it's a tricky one that if you don't know who to approach, you will be searching for a long time. Do so, but we have contacts and we're able to do so, and we can get that arranged.
Okay, yeah, no, definitely it would help out people who aren't familiar with the system, 100%. In terms of valuations, and you were talking about surveyors previously and how they're able to start going out into the market again now. How are valuations handled in foreign countries? Because obviously, say here in Dubai, you'd have local surveyors and they would go out and value the properties. But how does it work in practice in foreign countries? Do you have surveyors who are based locally?
Yeah, you would do. So sometimes banks have a panel of surveyors of which the client may be able to choose who they want to instruct. Now, we also have relationships with certain surveyors, so we can advise who to approach as well. Or banks might have just one valuator that they instruct, and how they would do that is they would then get in touch with the valuator directly, and it's just a case of the client making payment for the valuation. But yeah, there will always be a valuator on the ground who will go and visit the property. Either the clients, if they want to be there, they can obviously do so, or they can just arrange for someone to arrange access for the valuator to view the property.
Okay. And how do you say I was here in Dubai, I might go with the surveyor and check out the property and give them some more information about it and then speak with them whilst they're going around the property. Is there any way you do that, or you just send the person around the property and then they come back with the valuation? Or is there someone locally to discuss it with them, to discuss the valuation that they're giving? Or do you even do that electronically now? Is that something that's practiced, or not really?
So do you mean in terms of sort of to discuss the property when someone goes and views it, in terms of
just go and attend the inspection with them, basically? Is that something that's normally done, or not really?
You don't have to. You don't have to be if you're the property owner. You don't have to be with the valuator. No, not by any means. I mean, if it's a buy-to-let property, for example, at the time tenants allow valuators into the properties, and they just go in and view the property and then value it accordingly. I think that they will base they are local valuators, so they're going to always hire someone who knows the area, and will base it on comparables as well, both sales and lettings comparables if required. So that's what their figure will be based on, of course, and they're experts, so they will know the areas, and but they'll be trusted. Yeah.
Okay, sure. In terms of the mortgages themselves as well, so once obviously you've had the surveyor do their thing, you've analysed which banks or private lenders might be ideal for them. Are there generally any restrictions on mortgage lengths, or again, does it depend on the particular lender, or an age limit, or is the loan to value ratio, is it affected at all by being a non-resident in that particular country?
Again, it does vary, but typically, no. I mean, with the number of banks now who are lending to foreign nationals or overseas clients, I mean, it really just comes down to when they're expecting to retire, I suppose. But there are banks who will lend up to the age of 80, or when they're going, or whenever they're going to retire. LTV wise, no. I mean, again, it varies whether they're buying a residential or a buy-to-let property. I think what does have an impact is if they have a UK footprint. And by that I mean is if they have owned a property in the past, or they currently own a property, because that will then affect who we can approach. A lot of banks want to see that someone has previous mortgage experience, just to show that they're able to force any payments, and they're able to keep up with monthly mortgage repayments, and they'll be more comfortable lending to them. But that's really all there is. Other than that, you can get extremely competitive products. As I mentioned, you can even get 100% loan-to-value mortgages in some countries, not even being a resident, and that's very common in Europe. So certainly no, that doesn't really too much of an impact. The rates sometimes, of course, are affected, but again, it just comes down to who you approach. I mean, some banks would offer the same product, especially some private banks will have the same product, whether you are based locally or overseas.
Sure. I think really it's if you have enough money and you if you're on a certain level where you have enough income and your circumstances are correct, then you can find a mortgage for the kind of property that you're looking for. Am I correct in saying that, Sophia?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
What also I wanted to ask you about, when you're dealing in different countries, so say for example dollar and the dirham, it's pegged, so it doesn't really make that much difference. But say you're buying in, I don't know, in the Caribbean, or say you're buying in Thailand, for example, in Thai baht. How do people generally hedge against possible currency risk? And I'm assuming everything is done in the local currencies generally as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how it's done is it's a good question actually. So a lot of banks that we work with would be able to offer foreign currency loans. As a result, they can hedge against, like you mentioned, against the currency risk. Like you said, the US dollar is pegged to the dirhams. And whatever currency you're earning in, you can borrow in that currency just to hedge against that risk. Sure.
Okay, so you could potentially borrow in a dollar mortgage, for example, on the property that you're buying, so you can make sure that you for some reason, in case inflation happens in that currency, or whatever circumstance, you never know, you can actually cover against that, so to get the peace of mind. That's good. I also wanted to ask you, I know you've talked about high net worth individuals. What about for high value mortgages? Can you tell me more about what you offer in that space?
Yeah. So with high value mortgages, as I mentioned, it's where it's different to sort of lower value, and by lower value, I mean less than £1 million. Mm-hmm. It just comes down to who you would approach. A lot of the banks who look at high value mortgages tend to have a minimum loan amount, starting at £1 million. And those are the banks who tend to have ask for assets under management as well, and they tend to be sort of niche lenders. So that's really where it varies on who you would approach with the high value mortgages. You tend to also get more competitive rates in the high value mortgages as a result of going to some private banks or slightly niche lenders. Certainly.
Okay, and what about remortgaging as well? So you talked about bridging, talked about high value mortgages. What about for remortgaging on current mortgages that they have? Can you help out with that as well? Yeah,
absolutely. We can do. I mean, people remortgage for a number of reasons. Either, if their product is coming to an end, they remortgage to go on to another fixed rate. If they want to secure their repayments. Or perhaps times like this, people want to remortgage or release equity even from their properties. If they bought them a number of years ago, perhaps, and they have since gone up in value, they have a lot of equity in the property, they can release equity. That's extreme, yeah, it is. And I would always advise it to which if you've got a lot of equity in your property, why not? So it is extremely common and easy to do, and regardless of whether you are based in the country where the property is or even overseas, it's certainly possible. It would be the same, and the process would be exactly the same as well.
Okay. Are you seeing a lot of that? Because obviously, yeah, you're saying about people remortgaging at the moment to release equity, whether that be to fund their businesses, whether to buy more property, whatever purpose. Are you seeing an upturn in that in these current circumstances where people are looking to release that cash essentially from their assets?
I am. Yeah, I have done. I've seen a number of clients who perhaps were looking at doing things a couple of years ago, or even a couple of months ago, and they have now come back and are now looking at releasing equity from their properties. So yeah, it is common now. Banks are still doing it. Banks haven't really changed their criteria. So yeah, but there are clients who are certainly looking at doing so.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a continuing trend, especially for high net worth individuals, especially if they want to.
It makes sense. I don't see why you wouldn't if you've got a property which is still up in value, especially in prime locations such as Paris or London. You buy these properties knowing that they're going to go up in value and for capital growth. So why not take advantage of that?
Exactly. And with the mortgage rates being low, and you're talking especially in Europe being low mortgage rates at the moment, it's a no-brainer, really, isn't it?
Do you get a lot of them? I mean, do you get a lot of inquiries about clients even looking at remortgaging properties here or releasing equity properties here?
Yeah, we do. The difference between, I guess, say a London and a Paris and Dubai is that the capital values have been eroded here in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's a bit different in terms of like the value of their property. Maybe if they bought it in that kind of time frame, has actually gone down on the property, so they won't have built up as much equity as they could have, say, in another city. However, people who've invested 10, 15, 20 years ago here in Dubai, then yes, they would have bought at a lower point in the market, and then they do have equity built up in the property, and they will be able to take some of that cash out. But yeah, definitely on the shorter term, I wouldn't say it's very common, just because their value of their property now will be much less than when they mortgaged it in the first place. Unless maybe they've paid cash for it and they just want to take out a bit of cash from that property. But I'd say it's a slightly different thing in some of the other international markets.
Where are you finding people are buying at the moment in Dubai, and what sorts of properties are they looking for?
They're moving since the pandemic started, Sophia. It's been more towards the villas and the townhouses, I'd say. People are still interested in apartments as well, but it's only specific locations, or if they can find a good deal. But in terms of a general trend of where people want to live, there's a big trend towards having outdoor space, a pool, balconies, these kind of things, where people have been cooped up inside for a long while and realize that, I actually need more space. I can't handle my kids running around me every 5 seconds, or they need a bit more area, and people are thinking, okay, I don't mind to maybe live 10 minutes further out of the center of town, but I'll be able to have my garden. I'll have a bit more privacy. I won't be cooped up inside an apartment building necessarily. So they're tending to look more for end users towards townhouses and villas, and that's both on the sales and the rental side. In terms of in investment, though, I think people will still always stick to main areas. People will still always look at waterfront properties. People will still look in downtown, still look in the marina, for example. That's not going to change. Those areas will still be prime areas located within Dubai. But in terms of what we're seeing now, and I don't know if that's going to be a trend for 1 year, 2 years, however long, but at this moment in time, they're trending to more towards going towards the townhouses and the villas. And the reason is simply because of the price point. Prices have been going down, like I was mentioning. So as a comparable, say, for example, you're living in a 3-bedroom in the marina, an apartment. Now you can get a very comparable option but have, you know, a 2-story townhouse in Arabian Ranches too, or you know, Dubai Hills Estate, which is, you know, it's an extra 10 minutes away from the coast, but you have your own space, you have a lot more internal space and also outdoor space as well. So that's the kind of thing we're seeing. You know, people are looking at the comparables, and it makes sense to get a bit more room basically than they can in an apartment.
Why not? Yeah, no, it's a great time, I suppose, to take advantage. If that's how the market's moving over here, then certainly a great time to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think so, and that's what people are doing. That's why we're seeing a lot of people moving at the moment. We're especially busy, considering what we thought it might be, with the negativity, you know, around the world, I guess, and the hesitancy. But it's actually been, you know, really busy people looking to find a new place to live.
Yeah, us too. Even though, I mean, we've been extremely busy over the last 3 months, surprisingly. Because what you hear on the news is you hear that it's all going terribly wrong. But no, there's been so much activity. We've had a lot of inquiries. A lot of people also who we were in touch with quite a while back now looking at picking things up now. So it's been a really interesting time.
Yeah, I think so. Like you're saying, looking at picking things up now, I think there has been a lot of feeling in the world globally as well that this kind of, you know, recession, whatever you want to call it, global downturn is coming, and a lot of the savvy investors, they wait until this period of time on the economic cycle to start coming into the market, because they realize that there's good value, and you make money on property when you actually buy the property. That's if you get it at a good price at the right time, then that's when you actually make your money, and then you just let the property go up in value over time. Of course, there'll be ups and downs, but generally, if you're buying at the lower end of the market, it's the ideal time, and that's why they call it a buyer's market. So this is the time to take action, and like I said, it's busy for that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Going back to the mortgaging and all of this stuff. In terms of like legal protection in foreign countries, obviously there's different legal jurisdictions in different countries across the world. How do you recommend, or do you even offer that service of recommending lawyers locally to just give like whoever's taking the mortgage some advice on the terminology and the legal framework in those countries? And does it really make a difference when you use an international bank, for example? Is it more standardized? How does it work?
So if you're using an international bank, I think the legal documentation would normally just be the same in terms of the completion process and what the lawyers have to work on. But I would always advise, and you would normally have to anyway have a local notary or a local solicitor. It's also advisable because you never know what charges are going to pop up, whether it be stamp duty, land tax, or just local fees in general when registering a mortgage. Also, and at least with a local solicitor, they're up to date with all the changes. Lawyers can best also advise you on structuring. So it may be the case for a lot of high net worth clients, or not necessarily even high net worth, but if you have just sort of a number of properties, sometimes it's not best to hold it in their personal name. It might be best to hold it in a particular structure, such as a sort of an SPV, or however they may want. But a lawyer will best be able to, is best placed to advise you on how to hold the property as well, in order to lower your tax implications. So certainly, I would advise, and if clients don't have a local solicitor or notary, we can certainly put them in touch with them wherever it may be in the UK, France, wherever. We have representatives on the ground who can liaise with a local notary to put in touch with the client, or we have contacts all over. So it's certainly possible, and I would advise it.
Definitely, that's it, and good again that you provide that service to people, because so it's highly important to have someone on the ground locally who knows the lay of the land. I think. I wanted to ask you one more thing. It's something that I do with all the guests that come on here, and I do a kind of top 5 depending on the industry they're in, what they do. So for me, and asking you on this podcast today, I wanted to ask you the top 5 things to consider for your clients, or to prepare before they invest in a property abroad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think the first thing I could mention is stamp duty, and with that costs. So 2 points in general. Just do look into it. I think sometimes it comes as a shock to some people. They haven't done all of their research properly, and when it comes to stamp duty, land tax, it's a huge shock. They just haven't bear that in mind. So certainly it's really important to bear that in mind, along with putting down your deposit, of course. On the topic of deposits, I would always advise as well, speaking to a mortgage broker, speak to us, give us a call. It's completely free for us to give you a set of indicative terms and to give you an indication as to what you can borrow, how much it's going to cost, what your monthly payments are going to be, and what your down payment needs to be, so what deposit you need to put in place. Because with that, when you then do you know where you stand in terms of what you can afford to buy, and even where as well, it's really important to know. I mean, if you're buying, let's say, a new build property, a lot of banks become overexposed on new builds quite quickly. So it's always good to speak to someone like us early on, so you know who is even lending on the property, because you don't want to put down a deposit and then find out that a lot of banks are not lending. I mean, and speaking of sort of buildings in general as well, I would advise not just having a basic valuation done, but perhaps a home buyer survey, just to understand the condition of the property. So there's no nasty surprises. If it's a buy-to-let property as well, do your research so you understand what the rental yields are in the property. For the property, you can have a look on Rightmove or Zoopla, properties in the UK. If not, then call some of the local agents in the area and just have an idea as to what you are expecting to achieve. I think it's really important. And finally, I would advise just having a good lawyer, so you're aware of the whole process from start to finish, and you know all the costs. And with the law, of course, have a good mortgage broker as well. With Enness, we'll hold your hand from start to finish. We'll open a bank account for you, like I mentioned, if you need to. We are in touch with the banks, with the solicitors, from start to finish again. We will prepare the application for you in the most attractive manner, if you were, for the bank. So you have the highest chance of it being accepted. So we know what these banks, what they want, what they look for, what their criteria is. So it's really important to have the right people on board right at the beginning, just so it's a smooth and stressful process. Especially if you're overseas, the last thing you want to be doing is speaking to banks sort of 4 hours behind you, 3 hours behind you. It's just stressful, especially and working days as well, different here as well. We work Sunday, Thursday, and you're on the phone to someone on a Friday. It's just added stress you don't need. But with us, we have people on the ground, whether it be in the UK, whether it be here, wherever. If we need someone to chase up the banks locally, let's say in Monaco, for example, we can do so. We can have the guys down there go knock on the door. Sometimes that's all it takes. Just someone needs a bit of pushing. So those would be my top tips.
Thanks, Sophia. That's really great, and 100% agree with them. If there's anything you want to add, Sophia, please let me know now. Otherwise, I'll end the podcast. Is there anything else you want to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going back to what you asked me initially. I mean, what are you seeing typically? Typical clients at the moment looking at. But what are your typical clients at the moment?
Typical clients, it depends on the area really, but yeah, if it's investors, they're looking for specific deals. So if they're looking to invest, they're looking for good ROIs and just good pricing. So it's very price sensitive at the moment. If they're looking to invest, they're trying to get stuff that's below the market price, or just a general good deal. Otherwise, it has to be a specifically really beautiful unit. My boss always says this to me. He says it's a price war and a beauty contest. That's what he says. Because it's either something either sells if it's at a good price, or it's fabulously beautiful and there's nothing comparable to it. And it's completely true. And that's what we see in the market. Otherwise, for end users, completely like I was saying, they're looking for houses to live in. And it always depends, like you are saying, it depends on personal circumstances. So, for the high net worth individuals, they're going to be looking for the penthouses, the villas, the mansions. But at every level or walk of life, people are either they're looking to upgrade because the price is cheaper and they have the cash, their job is stable, everything is good, and they can look to use this time and the price point that everything is at with the low mortgage rates to kind of level up the property that they're staying in. So yeah, on the flip side, there's obviously, with the economic situation, there's people who have businesses which are not doing as well in the hospitality industry or in the aviation industry, and there are obviously small pay cuts or even job losses. So there are people looking to kind of consolidate what they have, whether that be looking to sell their home and move back to their home countries, or maybe they're looking to downsize their home, so sell the property that they currently have and then buy a smaller property because maybe they realized, I actually don't need such a large property. Kids have maybe moved out of the family home and they've just been keeping that home, and this has given them the kind of push to make that change. And yeah, otherwise it's people looking to even move from the property that they have, they'll sell it and then they're looking to rent and see how it goes for the next year, and see whether they want to move back to a different country or stay here in Dubai. So those are the two kind of sides of the coin. And I think that's why it's quite busy, because you have both of those ends of the spectrum, people looking to upgrade their lifestyle and some people looking to downsize. So in terms of transactions, it might not mean that prices are going up or something like that, but in terms of actual transactions, that's why it's busy, because people are looking to buy, sell or rent homes.
Do you sell properties in just Dubai, or is it all over the UAE?
No, we do internationally, and that's partly why I wanted you to come into to the podcast, Sophia, because we focus on Dubai, and I focus 99% of my time on Dubai properties. But as a brand, luxuryproperty.com, we do international properties, whether that be in London, whether it be the south of France, in LA. They even put on a private island in Mexico recently. So we have properties all across the globe that people, and especially high net worth individuals, can look at, even to a ranch in South Africa, just off the top of my head. So there's stuff all across the globe, but like I said, we do focus primarily on Dubai. But if you are looking for a property internationally, and again you need finance, then we can work together, basically, Sophia and myself, to find that property for you.
Definitely.
Okay, Sophia, thanks for coming on to the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you for having me as well, Lloyd.
No problem. If you just want to tell anyone listening or watching your social media handles, or any way that they can get in touch with you to ask you about mortgages and anything else they want to know, then please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if there's a way in which you can leave our details at the bottom as well, perhaps. But I can be contacted through LinkedIn. My name is Sophia Kazmi. I can also be contacted on my email address, which is sk@Enness, which is spelled Echo November Echo Sierra .co.uk. Or my phone number, which is +971 589 019 889. But I mean, if you go onto our website as well, which is enness.com, enness.co.uk, so you'll be able to find all of us and get in touch with the brokers.
Okay, thanks, Sophia. Yes, like you were saying, I'll put that in the description below. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put it in the description. If you're listening on the podcast, I'll put it in the description as well.
Perfect.
Okay, so once again, thanks for coming on, Sophia, and thanks for checking out another podcast here on Realtor Talk. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Thank you.